you understand, and anyone listening is going to understand that allowing yourself to assimilate a scenario and learning culture, learning understanding, getting your lens away and looking at the world from a world perspective opposed to a me perspective allows growth. And clap.
And clap. Welcome back to the WazaMedia Podcast. My name is JR. Welcome back. And it's been a while, but we're glad to have an awesome guest speaker today. We are really big at WazaMedia, are big on storytelling, and that's what we tell all of our clients. And we have someone on the show that's also big on storytelling. So I want to bring up Michael. Michael, thank you for joining us on the show today.
I appreciate you having me, JR. I really look forward to
it. For our audience, we met on the internet. And I know it's not as crazy in the 2021 world. So
it's a great starting of the story. We met on the internet. That's the way we're going.
So we have Clubhouse to thank for bringing us here together. There was I believe, refresh my memory, Michael, I think it was a veterans group on Clubhouse that brought us together.
Yeah, I believe that we were either it was a veterans network or it was a veterans room that was opened up, and we were just communicating on the platform.
It's great how social media has brought us all together and has built connections like this. So for a listening audience, you got to get connected. You got to go where people are, and that's why great opportunities like this happens, where I get to speak with Michael and let him tell his story. Because at WazaMedia, we believe that in the power of storytelling, and it does great things. And along with storytelling, Michael, for our audience that doesn't know you, can you give a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So my name is Mike Thomas. I am the executive director of Operation Meraki, and we are changing the landscape for veterans coming out of service, their transition. But a little about me is I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and was a 9/11 first responder. And after 9/11, I went into the military, did 10 and a half years in the United States Army. In that time, I was blown up twice. Still have all my limbs, but all the internal wounds of war are still there. So I started navigating my life through media and telling stories, and that's what birthed Operation Meraki, was getting veterans to learn how to navigate it and use the tools that I had going through transition. I teach it to them now. So I'm sort of the gold standard for my organization, because they get to look at me and see what's possible.
And I've seen your story in a couple of different places. For our audience, I'll make sure I put the links in the description. And I saw the video with you and the recent Shares Foundation, which you were semi-finalist. So congratulations for that.
I appreciate that.
And then also, as a photographer, I was really, really happy when I found you interviewed by Westcott. Mm-hmm. And so, and I saw you using those flex lights, which I was really jealous.
I have them in I have them in shop too. So don't anytime you want, JR. No, I really love the opportunity that many platforms have given me and many partners have allowed me. I think that being able to tell my story through those elements really move the organization forward. And really, to tell you the truth, as I move forward with the organization, I sort of fall to the background because I want the veteran stories more foreground than mine. And I just love it, man. I love the storytelling. I love the ability to be transparent and to be vulnerable in telling that story. So
you bring up vulnerable because I think still today, the number one fear of most people is public speaking. Mm-hmm. They would rather do all sorts of crazy feats and adrenaline items, but telling your story, public speaking, is still the number one fear for a lot of people.
I do think that that's because, there's take integrity, right? So So, you say one thing and then you have to come back and you have to speak on it. And then, if that story wavers, then you have an issue, right? Because then integrity is challenged. So I think that people have a fear of speaking because one, either their memory of the situation isn't clear anymore, or that they're afraid that they're going to come back and someone is going to take what they say a second time wrong. So it challenges them to get to know what they're talking about and get to know themselves in a way that they'd like to present it. So that's a hard thing for anybody to stand in front and be completely transparent to a community of people who don't know them, and then have it recorded and then referenced. So,
And one thing with storytelling is that practice makes permanent. Or practice makes permanence is how I learned the phrase, in which the more you do it, the more that you'll be better at it. And that way later on, it becomes more ingrained in you and in the way that you tell your story. And the thing is, no one can better tell the story than you.
That's true. I think being a first person perspective is always beautiful, right? Because no one can tell how the scent was that day. No one can tell how the rain fell that day, or how the emotion was that day, or what the internals felt like during that day. So I think more people need to learn how to tell their story, because I think there's so many beautiful stories out there that we haven't heard, and that can challenge like a lot of people's mindsets, a lot of people's thought processes.
And Michael, with some of the projects that you've done, I'm looking at these photos right now as we're talking about your project Guardian project, and the stories that you're able to tell visually by capturing that moment in time. That is also another way of telling a story, is through getting someone in front of your camera. And now I'm speaking photographer to photographer here.
Oh, definitely.
is able to capture the emotion that's coming out. And then as you're as a photographer, you are guiding out what you want from your talent or your subject to convey the story that you want them, or if you are in the moment where you're trying to get that candid, you set up the environment, and so that that emotion comes out naturally on its own.
So what's really unique about Guardians is Guardians was birthed out of the photography class that I teach, right? So the core program of Operation Meraki is Refocus. And Refocus is a program that teaches veterans the art of photography as an alternate means of therapy, as a bridge to traditional means, right? So my goal was to teach them how to tell their story, and then allow them to utilize that skill to talk to a therapist or to talk to a group, right? So we were trying to break the wall for adaption, right? And then I would sit in the classrooms as I was teaching, and veteran to veteran stories would come out, and it would just happen, right? And so I would hear stuff in the room that would say stuff like, "Oh, I haven't talked about this since 1980. I haven't talked about this since this happened. How did you even get this out of me? Oh, good old battle buddy, right?" And so they went into that mentality, and I started hearing it. And then I attended Stacy Parcel. She's the Veteran Project. I attended one of her creative live classes, and she was talking about a passion project. And I said, and so I asked a couple questions during the class. I'm like, hey, like, what is the impact of a passion project? And she's like, you can find what your heart and your drive is through a passion project, right? So I went down the lane of Building Guardians Never Forget, which is a documentary. It's a perpetual documentary, so I don't plan to stop it anytime soon. Eventually, I want to turn it into a traveling exhibit where we can have people come in and just get enveloped by the stories and the imagery, and we want to take that across the nation. So we did phase one, and phase one, we had a lot of mishaps, right? Because we had water damage on a hard drive. We lost some footage. We lost this. We lost that. And there wasn't like standardized thought process. And so the story wasn't consistent. So then we kicked off phase 2 of Guardians just recently with a 97-year-old World War II veteran. If you go on the Instagram page, you can check that out. His name's Harry Deal, and he was D-Day +2. So he was December, what is it, June 7th. He was on ground, but his story was unique. He jumped out of a plane that was shot by small arms, and he evacuated the plane into like the Normandy countryside and was sheltered by a French farmer, right? So like these things you don't get to hear. But with Guardians, the whole thought process was, I want to be a historian for my brothers and sisters that put that uniform on, and I want to tell their stories before they can't tell them again. And I want to capture it so that their family can come back at some point, when they're gone, and look at that story and hear their family members' words, hear things that they haven't heard, and then see it through the eyes of that person. So I don't like, a lot of times storytelling, people cut and carve and they sort of make this image. Like, I'm talking with a 97-year-old man. I'm not going to cut him up so he looks like he's a fast talking, slick talking guy. I'm going to give him his breaks. I'm going to give him his time. And so when you're watching it, you see him going through his mind, pulling out that story strand. And so you get to see that. And so Guardians really is like the heartbeat of the storytelling arc that we have in our organization, because it allows multiple stories to be heard by the public, and it's nonstop. You can hear it all the time. So yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it.
I'm looking at the Lancaster Eagle-Gazette that captured this in an article with the photo, and it's amazing to have this generation photo. And
All those photos me and my team took. So it was either me or Eric Egley, who is my director of community partnerships, and he's also 14 or I'm sorry, 14 years. Sorry, Eric. He's 40 years in photography, advertising photography. So I mean, he's amazing. He's amazing. He's a great partner to come in and sort of start saying, well, I want to look at this, I want to see that, let's figure this out. And then we're able to make those stories happen. So keep an eye out for that, because there's a lot more stories coming down the line. Lancaster Gazette is a great publication. We've hit the cover twice, and this was the Memorial Day episode or newspaper article that you're looking at. So Memorial Day, we were on front cover talking about Harry Deal and his family. So I love it. I love it. The community's behind us, and we're really trying to do some really impactful work here for veterans.
And the other thing is, there's not that many World War II vets left.
That is correct. We're losing World War II veterans year by year, and it's getting worse and worse. Soon we won't have any memory of the war. And so, other than history books. And so I'm looking at World War II veterans, Vietnam veterans, Korean War veterans. I want veterans that people are overlooking because they want the newer veterans, the sharper veterans. Our organization is not restricted by service, or by age. Like, we serve all veterans for every program that we have. We don't have a restriction on if you're a good conduct discharge, a bad conduct discharge, a maybe conduct discharge. We don't care, right? We just want to see that the veteran population, the veteran community gets served, and that our veteran stories are heard and captured. And they're not going to be good all the time. You'll hear stories, you've got military sexual trauma, you've got PTS, you've got all kinds of war stories, of things that people may not want to hear, but it's the story, right? So you unbias everything, and you open the floodgates and say, listen, we love you, we want to take care of you, we want to tell your story. And be surprised at how many people will come to that door. And so that's the way we operate.
I love it. And just looking at my own former career as an Army nurse, dealing with the patients I had, everyone that came to me that was that was hurt from either a jump injury or that came from overseas had their own stories to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it was, the things that they did with their battle buddies that were there, and a lot of it was not so good. Things that stories of regret, things that happened to them when they got hurt, where they got wounded, all across the spectrum of good memories and things that could have been better for them.
But you had a skill set in what you did that most people don't. And that skill set is you knew how to be quiet and listen, right? That skill is hard. That skill is hard because you want to interject so much. But when you just shut your mouth and you listen and you're an ear for somebody, the story at that point blossoms, right? Because then you can hear the hurt, the motivation, the thought process, the conflict, the struggle, the overcoming, like you get to hear all the layers and dynamics of that person's story, and it's woven through what they say, and so I don't know, man. I think sometimes people just need to learn how to just be quiet and listen. I don't know if that's a good soundbite. Let me ask my director of communications for that's a good soundbite.
The power of silence, can be impactful when used correctly, and totally did that on purpose for our listening audience. And the other part that I learned as a nurse is that you have to build up your communication skills in order to build rapport with your patients. Patients don't come to you because they're doing well. Mm-hmm. They're doing well because they're sick, there's something wrong, and they need to feel better, or they're in a time of crisis. And I just performed CPR, brought them back to life through ACLS, and now they're in recovery. So in order to get the information, we have to build a way to relate, but also as a nurse, I had to provide empathy.
Yeah, the rapport, man. The rapport is so important. I think that I hate to do the distinction between civilian and veteran and military, because I think that there's already enough stigma out there between those two separations, right? But what I do want to say is there is a approach that you can take from a civilian mindset over to speak with a veteran that would get you success, right? The simple thing is this: I don't have a point of reference, so I'm going to listen. Then I'm going to be empathetic, like you said, JR. Like, I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to understand your plight. I'm going to understand what you've gone through, and I'm never going to devalue it, because devaluing it then turns on a wall, right? So if I don't devalue it and I actively listen and I have conversation, all of a sudden there's no difference between you as a human and me as a human. We are just sitting in a room having a conversation. So once we learn to do that, or once we learn to bridge that between the civilian world and the military world, all of a sudden we have synergy, and synergy changes the landscape, right? Because then people care to hear. Right now, there's a lot of people that can hear but don't care to hear because it's not for their benefit. And so I just have this thought process that through stories, we'll be able to break the wall down, and we'll be able to grow empathy back into human nature, and we'll be able to present that to the nation and potentially, abroad. But I just think like maybe I'm just hopeless, man. Maybe I'm hopeless. Like I really believe in human nature. I really believe in humans. I really believe that we can be a great race of human race. I feel like we could be a great, capable planet, right? If we just learn to set ourselves aside and we just look to our brothers and sisters and fill a need. And so that's what storytelling does for me. I know for sure for you, because that's what you guys love to do. But I mean, the storytelling aspect has so much healing properties. But at the same time can also tear down, but we won't go too far into that.
I think, Michael, that is a perfect segue to something I really want to focus on for this episode, and I think our audience is going to get a big value out of it. Is
Mhm.
that just in our short conversation already, we've talked about our roles in communicating, get stories out of people, and telling that story. What I want to segue into is, Michael, do you have tips for how you work with veterans or you work with anyone in order to help them tell their own personal story?
Oh, most
Because
definitely.
it starts with them. But I know in the work that you've done, and also the previous work I've done as a nurse, there is a give and take when it comes to the conversation and building the rapport, that just as we discussed. But it also has to come from within the person that we're trying to talk to. So
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I
number
think
one, can you tell us a little bit about when you were working with veterans, especially with Operation Meraki? Why is it important to tell your story? And then we're going to go into a couple ways and how you feel that are good tips for
okay.
people to tell their own story.
Yeah, so why do I think it's important to tell your story? No one knows what you've gone through unless you tell them. Period. No one knows what you're experiencing unless you let them into that. I think that for Meraki, for Operation Meraki and Operation Meraki Refocus in general, which is our photography program, I think that one of the ways that I tend to uh, cultivate the community inside before we start telling stories is I love to make it safe, right? I think a safe space is a fertile space, right? So what I do is, first of all, like I look at everybody. My people watching is top tier, right? So like when people come into the class, I start looking at everybody who's withdrawn. I start looking at everybody who is worked up from being in a room full of strangers. I look at people with service animals. I look at people with some sort of hesitancy, and I break the ice immediately. I go, hey everybody, I'm Mike Thomas. I'm a 10 and a half year this 100% disabled veteran. I was blown up twice, this and that. And it's almost like a hi, I'm Mike, and I have mental health issues, right? It is what it is. I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with my story, right? So I believe storytelling begins with a seed, right? And so I have to be transparent, I have to give, and then I have to wait. So I can get right into instruction and go like, all right, so here's the exposure triangle, and let's start talking about lighting, and let's start talking about painting with light with your photography and light on the sensor, and that's great. But none of that matters until the ground is fertile and people can learn. And in order to do that, we have to be transparent. You are not being taught by a systematic approach or a systematic person who has like who is very clinical or very this or very that. You're being taught by a brother who's been in the uniform, who understands the uniform. And I've got these tools that I'm going to teach you that allow you to be able to get more open, to have more conversation. We're not going to kumbaya. I'm not going to hug you. We're not going to do all this stuff. That's not our intent. Our intent is for you to navigate your trauma or your story utilizing a tool of photography and transparency to push yourself into a comfortable state where you can have conversation. So once I've created that environment, it's easy. At that point, I already got questions. We haven't even started doing anything. Like, hey, so this is my camera. What do you think about it? And I'm like, it's beautiful. Let's keep moving, right? but that I believe that the start of it, the intention, it has to be pure. The story, like the purity of what you're doing has to be there, and the transparency of what you're doing allows the ground to be fertile for other people to give. No one, they always, there was a show I watched on TV, a movie, and I think it was like the Monkey King or something, and he said you know, a man can't be taught if his cup's already full, right? So you have to pour out. Like you have to pour out before you can get something, right? So in order for me to teach you, you have to give like I'm giving, right? So you meet me where I'm giving, and then if it's comfortable to you, you give. If not, just hang out for a while. It'll open up. You know, I'll give you an example. I mean, we had a veteran, without calling her name or his name. Um, you know, we were in class, and the class, you know, everybody's getting situated. There's a lot of motion, a lot of things. The organization that she came from told her not to bring her service dog. Okay. So she came to my studio without her service dog, in the mix of a bunch of strangers. Her anxiety peaks, everything goes crazy. Sorry, it's a her. I have this, but you know, her anxiety peaks, and all of a sudden, she's pushing away. She's in tears. She's ready to go. Now, as a event organizer, or as a organization, I could easily just brush past that and go, oh yeah, okay, she'll get together, or she'll leave, right? But in my heart, I've got to see what's going on with my Joe, right? I got to find out what's happening. So I go, all right, everybody, we're stopping. Sit down. Everybody sat down, right? It was a great response. Everybody sit down. Okay. I want you to understand something. And I look at her and I say, listen, um, what we're doing in this class cannot be achieved without you. I said, so here's what I'm going to do. I understand what you're going through right now. I have the same things happen to me when I'm out in public and things like that. I don't have a camera in my hand, or I don't have my kids around me or something, you know, like I understand. The person that told you shouldn't bring your service dog had no right to do so. But right now we're here together. So I grabbed another female from the class who was one of my past students. I brought her over. I said, this is your battle buddy. Anything you need, you talk to her. Within 30 minutes, me talking to her, her getting acclimated, getting settled, having a battle buddy, all of a sudden, she had some of the best photos of the class. But what would have happened if she walked out that door and I ignored her? Like a lot of things happen. What would happen? I would have never got the opportunity to meet her as a photographer.
I like how you helped. Number one, by surveying the room, you identified a couple risks and a couple issues, but then you created the safe space.
I have to. If I don't do that, I have done no service to my brothers and sisters that walk in that room. I am not adverse to being in the middle of a drive and shutting it off, and shut the water off and say, wait a second, we've got one. Because I feel like if you identify that one and you actually connect to that one, all the relationships in the room bloom, right? Because then they see that they're not just a number in your room. So they can all have an opportunity. If they all, God forbid, if everybody, you know, went crazy in the room, I would be able to go, hey, battle buddy with this person, battle buddy with that person. And so I have a mix sometimes in class of people who've been through my classes and people who are brand new to the class. So the people that have been through, I go, hey, go over there. Hey, go over there. Go over there. And we mitigate all the rough waters to get to that smooth flight. And once we get to that smooth flight, we can all get to the end destination. But we have to mitigate that first. And I don't work on a timeline when it happens. I'll bring in a mental health or a behavioral health professional if I have to. I got some on speed dial. I'll say, hey, come up to the class. I need you to talk to somebody, because I don't want no one leaving out the door with a need that we haven't met. That's just me. And that's the way I run the organization. It isn't, you know, it's not normal happenstance in a lot of organizations, but I believe that you give your all, you give your best, and once it starts to permeate the room, everybody gives their best. So it is what it is. I mean, if I'm one of the few organizations that'll stop a program in order to have a conversation with a veteran, so be it. It is what it is. I'll cultivate that culture, and it'll be Operation Meraki specific. So it is what, you know.
And I like how you take the approach, because it is, from you being a vet, you understand what veterans are going through, especially the veterans that are coming into your class, and having the ability to relate and empathize and sympathize, because you've walked in their shoes, and all those things will help bring rapport. So that way, it's the example that you mentioned, you could just start the class with just instruction, but that's not how a lot of veterans will. You don't gain trust in that way. If you've a lot of our, I'm sure it's the same with you, when you go to a new unit, it's okay, I need to put my defenses up, I need to
You
scope
snap
the
into
area.
soldier mode, and next thing you know, you Roger's first sergeant, Roger sergeant, Roger this. Next thing you know, you get comfortable, and you're like, "Hey, what's up, John? What's going on, man? All right, sergeant, I got you. After hours, what's going on, Bill? Like." But if you don't create that rapport, man, no one's gonna give it to you. It ain't gonna happen. I mean, you've PCS, you ETS, you've navigated the military. You've gone from hospital to hospital, TMC to TMC or whatever. I've gone from unit to unit to unit. No unit is the same, But if you can create a space, I almost take the approach of MWR, right? Like, come into the house, everybody come together. I don't care where you're at in mission. It's okay. Just come in here and enjoy what you're doing. And then you can go back to your rigmarole. You can go back to your regular day. You can go back to your regularly scheduled appointments and stuff. But right now, be in this moment. And if you can be in this moment, there's something for you here. So.
I like it. It helps level the playing ground. It equals out everyone. And sometimes we need those environments where no rank, no position, is just a plain level field for all of us to, number one, feel safe. And then number two, relate. And then number three, be humble about who we are as a person, because we're there to help each other out.
Yeah, experience, man. That's the way I look at it. Everything, if you can just sit still by the water and wait, you can hear everything, right? But if you ride past the water on a bike, you don't hear anything but the wind passing your head. I attribute that to the way that we navigate in trauma, right? We're riding that bike, man. We haven't learned to just stop, sit by the water, and then hear everything, feel everything, notice everything. We're just on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And that's just the way we're programmed. I mean, any military personnel knows it's suck it up, drive on, get to the next mission, right? Mission to mission to mission. So when we come out of service, we have that same mission to mission to mission mentality, and we never take time to stop. This class gives them the opportunity to stop and see the world through a lens. One of my favorite photographers, Hiroshi Sugimoto, right? Hiroshi Sugimoto used to go to the New York museums, and he took a camera, and one day he turned his head sideways and he closed one eye, and he said that this diorama looks like it's real, right? And he says the camera only has one eye. So if I can make the viewer think that this is real when it's not. Look at some of his diorama photos. Some of his diorama photos, you can't tell where the real ends or real begins and the fake begins, but it's all fake. And it's the way he lit it. It's the way he saw it. But you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't know that unless he was the artist he was and he created that, right? So it's the same thing with the way we navigate trauma, man. Like we have a unique way we see stories, and sometimes, stories are skewed, and sometimes stories are pinpoint, direct, right on. And we just need to learn how to navigate that, to tell the best story for who we are. So
speaking of trauma, I know a lot of veterans have seen a lot of trauma. I'm sure I know myself, and we all have our own personal
Hmm.
traumas that we've dealt with being in the service. Um, in some of the students that you've worked with, uh, was there any particular thing that you've taught them in which, how to either embrace their trauma in a way that they can accept it, to either use that trauma to help tell the story of who they are, of what they've become and how they overcome, or and I know for myself, I'm dealing with some of the stuff uh, that I've gone through in service, and I'm still continuing to go. It's still a day-to-day battle with
Hmm.
some of the things that I'm dealing with, and I'm sure a lot of veterans are. So um
So,
is there something that you've seen and you've helped veterans get through as far as using their trauma to help tell their story?
I have this exercise. It's kind of deceptive, right? Um, I get a hat full of words that the veterans throw at me, right? In reality, I've already gotten the words together, right? So I take words that they say, I take words that I already have put together, I put them in the hat and I let them grab them. Because sometimes the word would be like green, like it's not what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for life, patriotism, fear, things like that, that are very impactful words that are going to challenge the viewer, right? And so I'll take that and then I'll say, all right, everybody, I'll walk by, I'll have them draw a single word. Now we go on a photo walk and they're required to take whatever photo depicts that word. And the reason I do that is because sometimes it's hard to express words, right? Sometimes it's hard to express what we're doing. Like we have, like for instance, one of the words I had was regrowth, right? Or new life, right? And so this photographer did an overhead shot, almost like a product shot, and they did it of the sidewalk and a root busting through the sidewalk and a really, really, really vivid, bright green like plant right on the side of it, right? And so the I think it was like resurgence. I think it was what the word was, or reinvigorate or something, but it was a re word, right? and so when I got that photo from them, I was editing and cropping and looking at all the photos. They get what's called a 5 photo. The 5 photo is the best of all their photos. One photo that's the best and represents that word the most. And that person showed me the photo and said, I didn't think any, and this is not like super thinky. This is not super like, oh, I'm going to tell you about the philosophical meaning of this. This person looked at it and said, I saw the dead, I saw the life, and what I saw in that was that you can still live even after a bunch of death in your life. And I was like, huh. I said, okay, lesson to me, right? Careful what words you put in there because it's kind of got deep real quick, right? But the image itself was so amazing that I was like, huh, this is the first, I think this was like the first or second time I fielded the word thing. And I was like, okay, when done correctly, I get answers like this. So one of the things that I try to do is try to put veterans out of their emotions into their heads, into their hearts, right? Um, I think emotions and your heart are two different things, right? Like your heart tells you what it is. Your emotions can be skewed, right? So I try to get them out of their emotions into their heart and go like, all right, you know, um, aside from everything you've been through, if I was to say patriotism and give you that word to walk out here and shoot photos, you think you can get it? I sure can. Outstanding. Let's go for a photo walk. And I leave them. I'm there if they need instruction on how to get a perfectly exposed photo or something like that, but I leave them with that thought of that word and the environment. And I just let them go and shoot different things. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. um, because once they do that, they can navigate. So for me, I guess tips that I give the veterans is don't be restricted to your own thought process. Um, because you being restricted to your own experience or thought process limits your view. Um, Two would be shoot everything. Go out there and shoot everything, because you never know what you come back and sit with and go, wow, I didn't even notice I took that. But then, of course, as a photographer, different angles, different heights, play around with angle, play around with the way you're looking at it, play around with the way that you're interacting with it. And then of course, continuity. Make sure what you're doing has a strain of thought, right? If you're going to shoot 10 photos, make sure they make sense in the story you're telling. And I think that those quick points allow the veteran sort of to navigate what I'm looking for. And then it also allows them to sort of open their world a little bit, because, when they're looking and they're looking from their lens, it doesn't do anybody any good. The lens that they're seeing the world through, it's just like when we deploy overseas, like, you deploy to like Germany, let's say Germany, no, not even like combat. You go to Germany and you walk into the wonderful Germany, big bad America, right? And you go there and you be like, hey, everybody got to speak English to me, right? And you're walking around in the Louisenplatz and you're like, hey, I want a Coke and I want one of those, and they look at you, nine, oh, not, and you're like, no, I know you understand me. Then you get some German friends, and your German friends tell you a secret. Hey, you're looking through it through your American eyes. You're in Germany. Learn a piece of their language, learn a piece of their custom, learn a piece of their culture, and watch the world open up to you. So then you go there and you go, ich möchte einen Kartoffel mit Coke, pizza. And they're like, Kartoffel, yeah, pizza. And they're like, I like you, and you're like, oh, you knew English. He said, my English broken, your German broken. It's okay, But
my favorite is Muktikin Flammkuchen. So yeah. I missed the Flammkuchen. Sorry. I maybe missed all the German food now. So yeah, that brings me back.
Man, I miss it every day. I'm actually still trying to find a place to have a doner kebab. I'm still trying to find a place. I found a Turkish restaurant. I'm gonna go there and see if they have it and it's right. But no, but you understand, and anyone listening is gonna understand that allowing yourself to assimilate a scenario and learning culture, learning understanding, getting your lens away and looking at the world from a world perspective opposed to a me perspective allows growth, right? So all of a sudden you're going to, you're riding down Funf and you're going down to Mannheim and you're about to hop into, a club and you're about to go have conversation with your first lady or your first guy, and all of a sudden you're enjoying where you're at because you have allowed yourself to open up that channel. And so that's what I do. That's the only thing I want to do. I want to open up the channel and give resource. If I can do that and change the life of 80 to 90% of the people that are in my class, I won't even say 100. That's too optimistic. I think 80 to 90% is where I'm aiming for. Every time someone comes in, we do 15 class of 15. So 9 to 10 out of the class, I would love to be able to get that light to come on or that passion for photography. But if not, there's other programs we have that can help them and get them moving, and maybe they'll come back and do photography, or maybe they want to do video because we're integrating production in now. So we're
nice.
I want people to start doing like little docs. I want them to start going around doing like little shorts, learning how to tell story through film. So I have 20 years in media. So, my background, I love making media. So it's like, hey, anything I can add into the program that will open up, someone's storytelling, I'm going to do it.
I like your tip about moving the camera to get different angles. And I like how you bridged it with perspective. And then the third layer, is that you mentioned Germany. And traveling definitely has opened my eyes to get new perspectives, to look at different angles for how things I thought were normal for me. And it turns out that there's other ways of thinking. And so
you're a perfect candidate for my class. You're a perfect candidate. That's one more on the books. No, but
Sign me
yeah,
up.
man.
We'll make sure we continue this conversation after the episode.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the bridging that I'm talking about. Those parallels are very necessary, and you're not going to get that from a civilian trying to have a conversation with you. They're going to say this is a photography 101 class, and photography 101 starts with this is your camera. This is your no, that is not your camera. That is your M16A2. Where you point, where you shoot. When you do that, there's a result. That's it. Yeah, it's a little bit rough, an M16A2. Okay, fine. It's your duffel bag. Wherever you go, that duffel bag can be tossed on your shoulder and you can go anywhere and unpack it anywhere you want. It's simple, man. It's just parallels with things. I even got away from like basic curriculum, man. I do hip pocket training. The way my programs run, we do TLOs, terminal learning objectives, task condition standard, man. And it's not because I want to be very militarized, but what I do believe is that there's not enough of teaching things in edible ways, right? You come out of service, you're accustomed to learning, and you're like, hey, Sergeant, go out there and go teach them how to work the Singar radio, right? Okay, great. You get out there and you got a radio. Now you got to get 5 people. Then you take the 10 15 people you got to teach, and you go, okay, now you touch the radio, and we learn that way, right? Because we as a group, the easiest way for us to learn is to just immerse. So even DLAs, like language institutes and language academies, right? Like you go in and it's like immersion, right? So those things are in our DNA once we come out in uniform. We already know if we immerse someone in something, they're going to take a liking to it. They're going to start utilizing it as a tool. But we have a responsibility that when we teach them that tool, teaching them how to bridge it into the civilian world, because then we're doing a disservice if we're just keeping them in the military mindset. But we utilize what they know and we teach them how it lands on the corporate side, and we teach them that we make a land bridge for them so that they can just cross it, right? The engineers come in, drop the boat pieces, and people put it together, and next thing you know, you're riding tanks over it. It is what it is.
This has been awesome, Michael. I want to talk about what's next for Operation Meraki. You mentioned 2 things. Number one, Guardians is picked up. And then we talked about the piece in the newspaper article, and how you were featured in the Lancaster Eagle-Gazette with the World War II veteran. And then you just mentioned about video production being part of the curriculum now. Other than those two things, what's up and coming for Operation Meraki?
So we're building the curriculum for Operation Meraki Reengage, which is our job placement, job training, and entrepreneurship development program. So we're going to be teaching people how to navigate the landscape for transition. So that is our new program that we are really hard charging, getting partners for. So if you're looking to partner, please contact me at michael.thomas@operationmeraki.org. No, but the thought process is that our ultimate long-term objective is to turn Operation Meraki as a national organization, and with that, opening up our services to veteran families, because I believe veteran families are the anchor of the veteran, right? So when we come out of service, one of the things that I notice is that they take the ID, they kick you in the butt, they put you outside the gate, they say it's been great, and then you got to go figure out VA stuff, right? And if you got out into bad conduct, they said it's been great, don't even ask for nothing, right? So you got to look at upgrades later. But if you come out and you're employed, or if you come out and you have an opportunity, it's a lot easier to assimilate into the civilian world than it is if you come out, get put outside the gate, and you live in your car like I did for a year, right? So you live in your car, you got nothing, you got undiagnosed PTS, you're doing all this stuff, and the only thing that happens is you just succumb to those moments. I believe that the ultimate goal of the organization is to become the warm handoff from like the transition assistance program. They hand them to us. We put them into a 6-month work rotation where they're actually making money. They're establishing themselves while they're getting training on how to transition out of that service. Um, Here in Ohio, we have really bad. I don't want to say this because I don't want the state to get mad at me, but you know the job placers out here have an 89 to 90% placement rate of veterans, but they have a 30% retention rate of veterans, right? So the veterans are transitioning out of work every 7 months. And how can you create a career? How can you create livelihood for a family? If you have a wife and a kid, what kind of tension is that going to put on your relationship? How is that going to aggravate your PTS? What if we can create a bridge that when you come out of service, you go into 6 months of employment while we're training you to convert into your civilian role? But then instead of underemploying you, where we put you like in a warehouse because warehouse work is what we're known for, right? You come out of service, they say, we got warehouse positions. Why? Because we're on time, we're workhorses, and we don't complain, right? So they put us into warehouses, and that's what we do, right? Now, if you've got jumper knee, if you got any kind of back issues, you got shoulder issues, how long do you think you're going to last in that warehouse before you have to do something else? It just doesn't work. So the idea is that while you have six months, we're trying to get affiliated with Skill Bridge so that we can find some really cool things, so that we can place veterans 180 days into employment out of uniform, and then during that time get them additional training skills, teach them emotional intelligence, performance-based interviewing, things that they're not teaching them, and then help them to find a career with a partner that we're going, like businesses that partner with us, put them directly into careers that they can grow and stay in. So that's the ultimate goal for reengage. And then of course, later on down the road, I think 2 years from now, we're going to be rolling out 2 individual programs that will round us completely off of our core 5. And that will be Operation Meraki Replant, which is a sustainable food program put into communities that are underutilized, underserved, diverse communities. And we're going to anchor that program by a community garden in those communities called Hero Gardens. And the Hero Gardens will be honored to the veterans that serve and have served in that community. And we'll put that like the walk in there will be bricks with their family names and their service and their times. In the center, there'll be a flagpole that will have the symbol or the crest of the services, and a sitting seat for sort of mindfulness area where they can sort of meditate. But when harvest comes, we're going to feed those communities. The purpose of that community garden is to feed the community it's in. And so that alone, there will be a partnership where we can teach veterans how to do their own farms and things of that nature. We're still developing that. That's a couple years down the line. And
It just
then
totally reminds me of how in Germany they did community farms. It's very common out in
that's where I
Europe.
got that's where I got the ideas, is those community farms and those thought process of taking care of the community, feeding the community. And I love that idea because I think that when you have a community that's struggling, whether it be economy wise, food wise, things like that, then it breeds dissension, right? And I think when you decide that you want to help people, you start in your communities first, and then you infuse the community, and then the community thrives and it becomes a community of communities, and they start sharing, right? So that's my thought process. Is Replant will be anchored by that community garden. We'll serve those underserved, underutilized families, and we'll make sure that every time harvest comes, that those families are served. I believe that with those families' name being in the ground on that in that place, that there'll be a level of respect in that community of that they'll have ownership of it. And so I don't have to worry about it being tore up or stuff, because the community itself will already be a part of the build. And then we have Operation Meraki Rebuild, which is a home rebuilding program in those same communities. So I would like to be able to do, in our first year of rolling that program, 45 homes. And I would love to be able to pick those properties up and get a whole veteran workforce that will be partnering with the union to learn pipe fitting, carpentry, and all of those things. And they'll gain sweat equity, sort of like a Habitat for Humanity. They gain sweat equity towards becoming homeowners. And the idea is that the veterans will be putting back into their community. They'll be rebuilding homes. And at the end of the year, I'd like to give one of those homes mortgage free, fully adaptable to a veteran family. And so that's the long term of our organization, aside from opening the doors to veteran families once we've got our stuff together. And I just want to be a long-term member of the community, and any community that will have us will come in and we'll work with them. But I just want impact, man. I want to create an impactful organization that does not stop just because scenarios happen. I want continuity of character at all time.
You've got a lot going on with Operation Meraki, and I like the vision, and I like how your experiences have brought inspiration to it, especially with replant and the gardens.
Mm-hmm.
One personal question, photographer to photographer, have you been diving into any personal photo projects that you've been working on? Is there some? I know the pandemic gave us a lot of time to think.
Well,
As
I
some
mean,
of
I've
our
been I've been thinking about I've been playing around with the idea of a We Survived campaign,
Mm,
and going out to businesses and just doing environmental photos of the businesses and business owners. Maybe doing a sort of like I was thinking about doing it video wise, but then I was like, well, it'd be kind of cool to just do like an environmental portrait, you know, if it's like a watchmaker, or I don't even know if watchmakers exist anymore, but like, like, like there's a music shop where they fix violins. Go in there with the violins, go into like grocery stores and things like that. Maybe some aisles in the background, really set nice, and really tell the stories of how those businesses continue to thrive through the pandemic. I haven't picked it up yet because Guardians has been my forefront right now, but I've been pitching the idea and kicking the idea around to do a personal project. It's really unique, JR, man, because like the more I do with Guardians, the less I care about my own projects, right? Because I love to see the light and the aha moment in the veterans' eyes, like, oh, I can do this. And then I'm just like constantly going, hey, you guys do, you guys do. So I think I need to listen to my own advice and go out and do my own project. But yeah, it hasn't been there's been a couple ideas kicked around. I mean, that, and then I wanted to travel coast to coast and just
I'm itching to
uh,
travel again.
yeah, I
I
was
know
just thinking
everyone
like a
is.
like a coast to coast push, and then just doing the I survived mentality. I was thinking about going down to Flint and doing that because what they're dealing
Yeah.
with, as well as the pandemic. Like, that would be a great, not autobiographical biography, but like a very, very succinct thought process that I can go down there and document. But I don't know, man, as I'm getting older, like the photography thought process is like, how can I take photography and enhance it using video and
Mhm.
tell the story even more? I think the photography, like, I've been doing like natural light and just basic, like, simple flash and constant photography, and now I'm getting into the thought process of high sync photography, and like I would really love to see how that changes my photography. A couple of my mentors says you take amazing photos, but if you learn high sync, it'll change what you're producing. So I'm going down that
It'll open
exploratory.
up more areas for environmentals
Yeah.
in working with different lighting scenarios. So
So
It's
I
just
think I do it. I
tools of the
think I
trade.
do. Yeah, I think I do a similar thing when I'm doing stitching. Like I
Mm-hmm.
do sort of, I do what high sync does, but I do it in compiling stitching, right? Like I'll go and I'll say, oh, I have let's say a house. Okay, this bush, I'm gonna light that bush because I want
Mm,
this detail. This portion of the house, I'm gonna light it this way. Then I'm gonna stitch it together and it's gonna look dynamic, but it's not taken that way, right?
right.
So I think the high sync is gonna like really get it out the camera looking that way, and then I
Hmm.
can add all my flares. So I'm really excited about that exploratory program, or like just
Awesome.
just exploring that. But yeah, that's the only thing I'm looking at, man. Getting into high sync and really taking like I have a one of the sponsors of Guardian is light panels,
Hmm. Oh,
and
nice.
they gave us the Gemini's 1x1s and a 1x2, and then the Solux 6 Plus. So we've got like some Fresnels and a 1x1 grid and 1x2 light panels. So I'm just
Mm.
like I'm about to start doing some fun stuff with that. Uh,
Experiment.
yeah, I
Do
mean,
some
they gave it to us
experimentation.
for
Yeah.
us to build content and for us to tell the veteran stories and for us to, teach veterans. So I think it's almost ideal for us to put some story elements together and just put them through its runs. I'm excited about it. I'm like, oh look, I got nice lights. This is pretty. I already had the flex, man. I was like, this is great, but
It's a
now
good
we've got,
kit. It's a good
yeah.
kit. I like. I've gone from strobes, and I'm inching my way to get into constant LEDs. I know it's a pretty penny to get into, so it's just strobes are easy. There's a little bit of math that goes into it, but I really like how versatile LEDs can be. And those Westcott flex panels are great. And what you
Yeah.
see is what you get. It's no guessing. What
and
you
that's and
see is
that's
what you get.
that's the only thing that I don't like about constant light is the dimension. Like
Mm,
like constant light flattens your image. And I think like think about it like when you're strobing and you get that dimension. Like if I'm doing an edge light and I'm popping a strobe behind, and I'm giving that flash, I'm giving all these edgy looks, and then I'm butterfly lighting sort of like the key and the kicker, and I've got this really nice edge on the silhouette and things like that. Like you can do that with a flex,
mm,
with panels, but the way that it shapes that light, the way that dimension of image, you don't get that with a constant light. You
mm.
have to throw strobes in order to make that dimension. So just keep that in mind when you're going to your flex world.
Going to the flex world.
Yeah, because the flex is beautiful. I'll tell you, it's pretty light.
I
These
love
these
that. I
these
love
Geminis
how
are beautiful though.
we were able to talk about our veteran stories, what you're doing with Operation Meraki. I love the tips that you gave about how veterans or anyone can work on telling their own personal story through different mediums. And I love how we can talk photography nerd stuff because that's awesome. As we wrap up, Michael, do you have any can you do out some shout outs, or how our listening audience can find you and learn more about Operation Meraki?
Outstanding at Operation Meraki everywhere. So we have LinkedIn, which that one's a little bit more complicated, but if you put Operation Meraki, you'll find us. But Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, we're at Operation Meraki. You can also go to www.operationmeraki.org, or you can contact us at 614-957-3942. And pretty much that's the way you can reach out to us. You can also email us at info@operationmeraki.org if you wanted to get some more info. If you want to sign up for any of the classes, you can go on our website and go to the programs tab, do the drop down, and then click on either one of the programs, refocus or reengage, and fill the form out, and we'd get back to you pretty quickly. So that's about it.
Awesome. Michael, this was an awesome time that we got to talk and chat. Thanks for coming back on. Thanks for coming on to the show.
I will definitely come back on the show.
I would love to have you back. I was already thinking that you were coming back already.
And then yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me. Like I said, when it comes to veterans, we can't leave each other out there. We got to get each other's back. We got to get each other six and stay on it. And I think that we have an opportunity to change the landscape of the transitioning veteran as a collaboration. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching our video. If you want to learn more about WazaMedia, go to our main channel over here. And if you want to see more podcast episodes, go over here. See you next time.